call this committee of the whole meeting to order. And the first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a motion for that? Councillor Maudlin, Councillor Studley, all in favor?
Mayor,
Yes,
can I have some discussion first?
on the agenda.
Yeah,
We just throw me off, okay.
I just want to make sure that I would like to include some discussion on, and maybe council could give us some direction on where in the agenda. I'd like to be able to talk about the Solar Now project.
Do which one?
The Solar Now project?
Solar Now
The
project.
city stage project.
Why don't you add that to business?
If you wish to add it there, Mayor, or
As a late
I
item?
can bring it up during operations reports. Whatever you
Oh,
like.
well, yeah, we've got it in our operations report. That would be more appropriate. Just
Yeah, okay,
talk to it
the
there.
other topic, and I'm hoping that I would like, because this is a committee of the whole meeting, it's a bit more formal. Is there somewhere in the agenda we could include the public meeting? A discussion of impressions from the public meeting that was held on May the 2nd. Thank you, I saw Mayor and council, 4 of you were there, that looked pretty good, I watched it. Is there a place in the agenda where we can talk about?
Well, I don't see that in having reviewed what we're dealing with here, so that might be an appropriate late item.
Yes, okay, a late item?
Yeah.
Mayor? Okay. Is that-
It's agreed to add that. And Councillor Studley, you're okay with seconding that motion with the amendment? All those in favor?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Council.
And we have minutes from April the 8th to adopt. Motion to adopt those April. My reading is right. That's the last we had one. Yeah, April 8th. Councillor Corlick, Studley, all those in favor? And bring us to the registered petitions and delegations. We have Dan McMaster here. No? Okay, let's leave that and see
Yeah,
if,
we'll do a quick call and.
yeah, see if he arrives here. We can move on to Angela Nichols and the Community Courtesy Circle. Angela? Welcome, that's quite I was quite taken aback by the whole concept, so I think it's a different direction, and I certainly welcome your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. I am Angela Nichols. Again, thank you, Mayor and Councilors. I am Angela Nichols. I'm here in regards to the suggested community courtesy circle. Although circumstances didn't allow me to be here before now, I believe you are familiar with the suggestion put forward. It was created as an option to address homelessness and drug abuse. I ask you to keep this in mind in the coming days as our community works towards finding solutions to these difficult challenges. Before I continue, I would like to take just a moment to thank Les Johnson with Grand Forks TV, our local health food store, the New West Trading Company, and all who supported me in my endeavors to make this idea available to people. I genuinely want to thank everyone for taking the time to read and consider the ideas within, as I know it was not an easy read for some. The Community Courtesy Circles components speak to some of the specific challenges a variety of homeless people face on a day-to-day basis. I do need to apologize for misstating that the construction and deconstruction of tents would be required, as I believe this isn't currently part of the adopted bylaw. The proposal also consists of items to aid in some safety concerns regarding drug use. It also relies on involvement by both organizations and professionals, as well as individual, everyday people. This interconnectedness is a really important aspect of this proposal. There's been what I recognize as a disconnect, perhaps even an objectification, which has occurred in regards to the homeless people and those with drug addictions within our town. I think we really need to nurture an atmosphere of acceptance of the people who are experiencing these difficulties and begin to cultivate a deeper comprehension of the complexities involved for the individuals first of all. This seems to have started, and I see see it as a necessary first step in moving forward. With respect to addictions, they can range from what we consider to be healthy habits to very hard drugs. There's quite a little list here. There's exercising, food, diets, a spiritual practice, work, sex, shopping, gambling, emotions, caffeine, sugar, cell phones, social media, smoking and vaping, alcohol, prescription drugs, and street or recreational drugs. So anyone who is trying to quit any of these or has successfully overcome one can use that experience to relate to some of the challenges that some of our community members are facing. Most times, one needs to tailor the method in which they discontinue its use. Some use a comparable substitute to lessen symptoms of withdrawal from the addictive substance, such as smoking cessation products, or having another beverage other than the coffee with caffeine, or natural or other sweeteners in place of sugar. Others can offer us support and tips on how to address non-physical aspects of addiction, but we usually want to be the one to choose when we quit and how we do so. In regards to opioid use, it can take as little as 5 days to a few weeks to become addicted. Doctors prescribe opioids for pain control and have adapted their procedures because of their addictive property. Prescriptions often come after surgery or an injury or for chronic pain or chronic disease. This has been the start of some of the addictions, as they're not all from recreational usage. Addicts are also not all of a certain age, nor all from single-parent dwellings or low-income families. Opioid use over time reduces the body's analgesic capabilities, where it can no longer deal with pain symptoms naturally. This is one of the reasons why it is such a difficult addiction to conquer. The Community Courtesy Circle invites people of all groups and ages to gather together and participate in different activities. There is no financial requirement for one to be involved in its courtesy capabilities. It is purely a venue for people to interact, maybe explore an interest, or try something new. As much as we need our physical needs met, we also need to be able to play, use our creativity, enjoy movement, and enrich our spiritual lives. This feature allows anyone who holds knowledge of a subject to lead a group in an activity. It also encourages professionals to do the same, as well as groups and organizations. Cultural, arts, and entertainment performances are also welcome. Bringing people together to learn from one another and have shared experiences fulfills a deep need that we all have, to be accepted, valued, and connected with others. Our most satisfying moments, those that lift us up and fill us with joy, wonder, gratitude, or peacefulness, are the ones that gives our lives meaning. We are all on a level playing field in this regard, regardless of our socio-economic status. Perhaps we can begin to shift from a materialistic, value-based society to one that starts to value people's deeper qualities. There are wonderful, qualified people holding positions in various occupations. They may be successful in the traditional sense, but often feel like they're lacking meaning, just as much as anyone else. It's often this feeling that leads people to actions that may become addictions. Oftentimes, if we are of service to others, even in the slightest of ways, it enhances our day. The combination of courtesies builds an enhanced support network based on both our organizational front and individual level. If these issues are not otherwise addressed, they will likely worsen. Decade after decade, issues like poverty, hunger, homelessness, alcohol and drug use, and different crimes have continued. Now, they are no longer invisible. They are not left to a select few. With the economic situation of today, far more are likely to become homeless and or hungry before too terribly long. Sometimes people want to treat drug addiction as a crime and arrest and prosecute the average street user. This ends up being very costly and ineffective. The current presence of fentanyl in particular has also changed the dynamics of drug use. It has been defined as an epidemic for a reason. I don't pretend to know your job. I do, however, grasp the difficult position that you are in. Not solely with these issues, but also trying to maneuver through the rebuilding after the flood of last year. Although statistics, data gathering, assessments, consultations, best practices, among many other logistical concerns may have their place, please remember and be guided by a morality and humanitarian efforts. I want to applaud Council for supporting humanitarian efforts thus far. I think the Warming Centre is remarkable in their offerings. The Women's Transition House and efforts to address the housing shortage should not go overlooked, as these two are excellent contributions. I also think it's important to acknowledge the efforts made to improve the dialogue regarding these important issues. A thank you to the citizens for Better Grand Forks for their time in organizing the public meeting. As well, I'd like to note that I appreciate Council's offer to sponsor the meeting and your attendance. I'm also thankful to the panel's participants for their input, many whom spoke very eloquently, and for Michael Strukoff too for guiding us through the conversations. In addition, a quick sincere thanks to everyone who was able to attend that evening. I do think it's important to note that no one wishes to go around bragging about their situation when they are experiencing difficulties. I would like to make sure that there are less obstacles in place so that when someone is hungry, they have food, no questions asked. They need to be warm and dry, and they can easily walk indoors. If they need other assistance, they should be able to get it discreetly and respectfully. I find it is counterproductive to ask someone to jump through hoops to prove how much they are in need. I feel we all deserve the most basic of things. People aren't searching for handouts unnecessarily, nor do they want another's pity. But most would probably appreciate another understanding. I do wish to share a few other suggestions prior to wrapping up my presentation. In respect to the notion of a drug maintenance sort of program, I suggest offering a medicinal cannabis treatment for opioid addiction. This could be done with either funding and or additional assistance. It's being found as an effective remedy by many. It's not treating an opioid addiction with another opioid like methadone. Cannabis is currently a legal substance which can treat pain caused by inflammation, as well as aid in opioid withdrawal symptoms. Next is that of a wellness house. This idea was shared with me by another who would like to ensure that when someone feels ready to address their addiction, they could go to a wellness house and immediately start to receive help with the type of options they choose to pursue. If cannabis treatment was available, it could begin right away. If others choose to go to a treatment facility out of town, then having someone that could take them there as soon as the space was available would be immensely helpful, as well as assistance in picking them up when they've completed treatment and help in navigating and accessing the appropriate support services for them. There would be trained staff on site with meals provided, and they would have a safe place to stay while exploring their options. Another is a wellness week. It's based off of a program for supportive housing in a large city. Health and wellness organizations, businesses, and individuals spend a day offering services for a reduced fee or for free to its residents. This includes many things like dentists, chiropractors, massage, hairdressers, photographers, etc. As we've gone through a difficult time, and given the situation many are in, perhaps some of those in our community in the health and wellness arena could do something similar for a limited time for the people in town. A community garden could be planted for the primary purpose of donating the yield to feed people. This idea I refer to as the People's Garden. It could also include gleaning farms and orchards and include preserving foods for later use. And much can be done if we want it to be. Things need not cost an exorbitant amount, and not everything needs to take years to do. I urge Council to take all of these things into consideration in the decision-making process. I'm aware only certain things will fall within your mandate and jurisdiction. Again, I wish to acknowledge all the fantastic efforts that have been being done on the issues from all levels of government. When I ask that every effort be made to reduce or minimize bureaucracy when it comes to humanitarian enterprises, I am speaking of the many regulations, procedures, and requirements that exist within so many corporations and organizations today. I am simply asking that you keep the humanitarian efforts high on your list of priorities and help to keep the process of implementing them as easy and as simple as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Very insightful, and I know the Cannabis Substitution Project in Vancouver has been really successful. They get their product donated from the illicit market, but it's able to support a lot of people. The kind of hurdles that we would have to get through to provide that here in our town would be provincial and federal. If there's people willing to push that, I'm not sure the council can do anything more than endorse the concept, but I think it has to be a grassroots kind of recognition of that as a treatment option. But you know, I think in general, this is a very optimistic look at some of the things that we can accomplish if we work together. Questions, council? Or the audience? Councillor Moslin, this is on your topic, basically. Well, of the meeting.
Yes, well, she did
coming.
mention the public meeting.
Well, and I think that's part of what shaped what she was talking about.
Yeah, no, thank you, Angela, for being an advocate, for standing up with a clear vision of a more compassionate, caring society. In your description of many things, I recognize things that we do already. That our community is caring and compassionate and struggling forward with this burden of homelessness, which is, I share your anxiety that it might grow. That we might in the future become more overwhelmed by that symptom, economic symptom, and you called it a culture of a disconnect. So I do thank you. I thank you for that, and I certainly will undertake to continue a humanitarian effort as simple, as straightforward as possible, and as high a priority as we can, as we struggle forward with these things. I'm hoping, and thank you for mentioning and thanking the May 2nd meeting too. I thought that was a very important moment in our community, Mayor, and that was why I would like to talk about it. I guess we will all under late items, right?
Right.
Where we put it. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So I don't have any more questions.
Councillor Thompson?
Angela, you have to turn off your mic.
Sorry.
Your mic.
That's it. There you go.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. That was a very comprehensive presentation that you've prepared and brought forward today. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware that Council at the Association of Kootenai Boundary Local Governments annual convention, not this weekend, but the weekend before, the last weekend of April, put forward a resolution that was endorsed by the delegate body. And that was to ask the Ministry of Health to fund more, put more funding into beds for detox and rehabilitation. Currently, only some are funded through, and very few, through the health associations. And all the others are basically private. And someone who, in my opinion, is wanting to be better and to get off their addictions can't afford to pay for their own rehabilitation. So I think that there are those people who wish to improve their lot in life, and that resolution passed and will now be going forward to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities annual convention in September. So hopefully we will get some support there and can lobby our provincial governments to do more.
Any further questions, Nigel, or Mr. James?
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, Councillors. My name is Nigel James and I'm a resident. I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but if Mr. Nichols would be willing, I would personally like a copy of her presentation, and it might be an idea that the city could make copies of it available to other people as well, because there's a lot of good thought involved in it, and can only be to our advantage, in my opinion.
Angela, and your verbal presentation here included more than what was in your written material,
Right.
right? So could we get your presentation in writing so we could distribute it?
As long as it doesn't end up being posted and used elsewhere, if it's just for reference.
It just,
Perhaps.
yes, that's what I just, I mean, one would think if your name is on it, then it becomes semi-copyright anyway, doesn't it?
Well, and I'm open to suggestions on that. I certainly don't want to subject you to any community response to that in a negative way.
Your Worship, the pieces that are in the agenda are already publicly on there, so it is readily available through the agenda on our website. I think that Ms. Nichols' presentation, if she chooses that somebody wanted to have it, it would be up to her to be able to release that to someone else. It's not a city record, it is her own verbal presentation, so.
Perfect, okay,
And
so,
it is also, I think, recorded. by-
GFTV.
yeah, so we're covered on it, Nigel, or Mr. James.
So it is available.
Yeah. Okay. Motion to accept the report. And the seconder, Councillor Corlick, Councillor Zelinski. All those in favor? Angela, it adds another level of community response, so thank you very much for that. And I think your words will shape some of our future decisions.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Do we have any update on Dan?
Yeah, he won't make it this morning. He got called away on some business last minute.
Okay, certainly worth rescheduling that. And next, Sharon Perrin.
Hi.
Hi.
Sharon had to teach this morning, so she couldn't get away. So we can present what because she sent a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, this is the rewilding project
Yes.
at Perley School.
So what these are just off the phone there. Just right upstairs. Yeah, so Perley Elementary School with Sharon Perron at the head of it. They wanted in the southeast corner of the Perley field. So that's this closest corner to us. They want to do this rewilding project. So it's kind of like an outdoor classroom that they want to build. And this is their Nature Connection Pyramid. It's quite lovely. So I'll leave that up for a second for everybody to have a look at. But this is their idea, is to have an outdoor, basically an outdoor learning area. And so this is their original design, and when they submitted the original design, we realized that it actually crossed over onto a couple of city lots that we have down in that corner. And so we talked to them about some different options for, say, a license of occupation or some different things. They decided to redo their design to ensure that the entire thing is on just Perley property. So they have an updated design that they're going to get to me. It'll be very similar to this, but it's that would have been right down in the southeast corner. But unfortunately, that would have encroached on one of the city lots that we have down there. So what they were looking for, actually, can you put up the delegation request in? Report, please.
Oops.
Okay, so these are the reasons that they're requesting it. This to enhance outdoor exploration through water play and science throughout the year, during winter as well as well seasons. Water and mud play facilities, tactile exploration, brain development, also beneficial to health and microbes, increased resilience and immunity. Develop fine and gross motor skills for all ages, hand-eye coordination from pouring, squirting, scrubbing, stirring, and squeezing. Cooperative play and sharing, turn-taking skills, problem-solving, judgment, reasoning skills, creativity, art with water, ice sculptures, measuring skills, volume, water displacement, water science, water cycle, water and plants, gardening, water and insects. And they believe that their request, will benefit the community by encouraging the development of strong, healthy, environmentally aware children. These children have an influence on their families and therefore on the entire community. Getting children outside for their learning will help awaken all the senses and encourage full mind, body, and spirit development. And what they're requesting is that the city install and maintain a water line and a frost-free hydrant for the lining project. They will also, and that the city will also waive any water use charges for the benefit of the children of Perley School and surrounding daycare. So we've had a discussion with Public Works to find out where the lines were, and there's a water line, sorry, Calvin, do you remember? There's a water line up the,
In the
Something
sidewalk.
else?
73rd. It's in the sidewalk on 73rd.
is there anything that was at the elbow?
Nope, I don't think so.
So there would be a requirement to go into the sidewalk, so there would be some costs for replacement of sidewalk and putting in the line and the hydrant. And we don't have a solid estimate on that at this time, but if council would like us to move forward and look further into this, we can get some estimates on what that would cost.
You don't have solid, obviously, but is there some kind of a guesstimate? Are we talking hundreds of dollars or thousands or tens of thousands?
Yeah. So generally speaking, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be in the thousands, not tens of thousands.
Okay.
But more than hundreds.
Okay.
It would depend on council's wish. Normally, for this type of situation, we would put a pit meter. So we would have to remove the sidewalk, part of the asphalt, to get the service to the property line with a curb stop. But if we're gonna go right to the frost-free hydrant, it's whether council would want that metered, which I would suggest we meter that.
They're asking for it not to be metered, that they want it to be waived.
You can meter it and waive it.
Yeah.
You
Waive
can
the
meter it
cost
and waive
of
it,
it.
okay, just so
Just
you can
then,
keep track of the water being used, right, okay. Councillor Moslin?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess I'm really puzzled. Is there a reason why the school district can't provide the water?
If it's on our land.
It is on our, it is all on our land. So is it on school district land or it's on school district land? Is there a reason why the school district cannot supply the water?
Sorry, it's the first time I saw the presentation, but it looks like with a frost-free fire hydrant, they want it in the winter as well. So if that is the case, I'm not sure they have anything other than irrigation in that area.
Okay, so I get it. So the irrigation would be below, would yes, it
Wouldn't be
dries
year-round.
up during the winter.
Right.
Okay, and I have one more question.
Gavin may be able to solve some of the questions here.
Yeah, sorry, just a comment. They're looking for a water service to come off of the road there. So normally we would be working, because it's coming off of our main, on providing or working with the contractor on that. So it is something that's not coming from their existing water service, which would be much closer to the school, but from a new water service is the request, because of how far off of their existing infrastructure.
All of which leaves the question of how much it's gonna cost, depending on how we do it. Okay, let's work around the table. Councillor Krog first.
A quick question, this, the picture of the hydrant, they call it a hydrant, but it looks like a hand pump. Is it, you just open it up and let it flow,
Yeah.
or does it have to be physically pumped?
No,
It's under pressure.
Okay, and who's to
You'd lock it.
stop it from, just being opened and left?
there's usually a lock, you can put right on it. There's a little hole in the bottom corner. Yeah.
Some light on that.
Yeah. So the idea is that with the handle, you open the handle and it opens a valve underneath the ground, so it can be used during the
Okay,
winter.
so it's
and
not that.
So it is pressurized. We would be looking for probably, I would estimate a couple $1,000s of materials to get from the main to the curb stop. Usually the meter assembly is by the owner, but if council wanted to donate that part, we're probably looking at another $2,500 plus equipment and time to put this in, so.
Councillor Corley?
Okay, I guess my concern with that is, one, what would, because it has a pond and everything, what I was looking at in the plans. And what would our liability be? Because we've installed it and we're kind of looking after the water system and that's what the plan is, right? And two, those pumps, will they be available for anyone's use 24 hours a day? Because it could be, and then what, we'll be on the hook for all the water usage? I just-
Questions, Councillor Moslin?
Well, I would like to know, frankly, has the request been made of the school district? Has the school district been asked? It would seem to me that that we are usurping the school district by granting permission to put a city project on school district land.
Straight.
This is a request from the school district.
So the school district is making this request.
Yes, and the hydrant is, there's a lock that can go on, yeah, they can be locked out so it can't be used. So I would expect the school district would have it locked up and they would unlock it and use it.
Is it from the school district or is it from the teacher?
It's from the teacher with the support of her principal and from the school district, yeah.
Councillor Zelinski?
How much does the city pay us for water service now? Or how much does the school division pay us? Perley School, how much do they pay us for the water service that we provide?
Market.
I'd have to look at the service size and the usage,
But it's substantial. Are you concerned about?
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, I thought they were on their own system, but you're saying that's just for the irrigation, so.
Right. So they have a well for their irrigation, but the building is serviced by municipal water.
I assume that'd be for potable reasons, right? Because irrigation doesn't matter if it's potable or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mr. James and then Councillor Thompson.
Your Worship, this may be a wild suggestion. It's good for history learning for the children, and we should think back to when the first family came to Grand Forks, which was a covert family. And the children, 3 children I believe it was, 3 times a day had to walk down to May Creek with buckets to go and collect water to bring back for cooking and other items. As it's back to the wild, why don't they go back in 150 years and know what life was like then? And in the winter, they can get the water from the lavatories or wherever else in the school and carry it to where they want to use it at the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. James. Then Councillor Thompson.
Well, I think it's a laudable project to do this, but education, in my view, is the responsibility of the Board of Education, not the City of Grand Forks. So I'm having a bit of difficulty as to why that is responsibility is being transferred to the city and why the school district isn't paying for this project. Danny wants to answer.
Kevin.
I'll circle back just to the request, and they're looking for a new water service, which is something that is well within the city's realm of responsibility and you know what we do. So they're looking for a couple things in addition to that, but at the core of it, they're looking for a water service for the the southeast quarter of the field there. So if you want to look at it from the perspective of is it in our domain as the city or is it someone else's project, at the very least providing a water service to the property line is within our realm, and then looking at the hydrant on their property and things like that becomes a separate issue. But the first part is certainly something that we do all the time.
So then as a water service, we would charge them?
Generally speaking, yes, a developer would be charged for that water service, and so the request would be to, you know, waive those fees and take on some of that cost is the city, but the actual provision of it is, you know, within our.
Right, so we have two
our scope.
questions there. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I mean, our water is based on user rates and consumption now, as well as flat fee. And we're asking, I guess I'm just having a bit of a problem with asking our water users to support this project when, in my view, it really and truly belongs with the school district, and they shouldn't be coming to the city and asking for this.
So consolidating things here, it looks like putting in the service is our job, and that putting it in, then we can charge them. So they're asking for it to be not charged. So we can agree to put it in, and to deal with charging them is a separate issue.
Okay,
Councillor?
sorry, the putting in and the waiving of fees for the actual metered water are two separate. Like,
Exactly.
they're asking us to pay to have it put in, and then to pay to, in other words, pay for the water that they're going to consume. If the school district paid the cost, just like a developer, and then we waive the actual usage, would be a good compromise.
Well, I think your first point is well taken. Let's deal with it in two sections. Let's agree to go ahead with putting it in, and we can decide now or decide later whether we're gonna do it for free in terms of the water usage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I remember our bylaws correctly, if someone walks in the door to say, I need a new water service, we send them to an approved contractor to get it done. Like, the city really doesn't do it. That's my understanding of the bylaws.
From our property line.
Yeah, whether it's a new house or whatever, as far as, you know, whether it's the dentist office or BC Housing, we send them to a contractor to get it done. As far
They
as,
bring, we tap into it.
oh, well, yeah, but as far as getting a new service,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's the regular route, I believe.
Okay. I need some help with this, please.
So just on the servicing piece, kind of how we've been handling it is the contractor excavates, and then our crew goes in and ties into the system, depending on the service size. So anything from 2 inches below with water, our crew would do, just tapping, putting the cork on, getting the service ready to go to property line. For sewer, it's different. They expose it. We give them the service connection to the sewer main, and then the contractor takes it from there. So it would kind of depend. It's not unheard of that council's waived this type of request in the past, like Habitat. We also did a service in kind and the parts for that project. But I think it's not a matter of if we can do the service or if they're requesting the service. It's, are they going to move ahead if they do have to pay for this? Do they have the budget for that? Would council be willing to put the service into the curb stop and then, you know, do some combination of cost share, or it's really up to council, and whether you want it metered, it does add to the price with the pit meter significantly. So, but there is some things to consider. There's the sidewalk panels would have to be replaced, and there's probably some minor paving that would have to be done. And then, yeah, it would be up to council.
I think you're giving us a suggestion here that we negotiate the cost. Is that's sort of the bottom line? I mean, that's a big package of things that Councillor Allen.
Yeah, having listened to our operations manager, if this is gonna happen, then I think it's gonna have to go along formal lines. I'd like to see a request by the school district for the installation of a water service.
You don't think this meets that criteria?
I'm having a hard time, Mayor. I don't see the superintendent's signature anywhere. I don't see the principal's signature anywhere. But, you know, anyhow, that, once that's started, the formal request is made, then we can talk about contractors and costs.
Okay, am I
Sort it out.
seeing nods to that suggestion here, Councillor? Do you want to put that on the table?
What do you think, Councillor Garland?
Yeah, I would kick it back, wait for a formal request, and if we have some figures, even if they're within plus or minus,
Right, so we
then they
could
can say that, but yeah.
please and supportive of the concept and
Yeah,
it's
supportive of the
creative and
concept. But my fear is like some other projects in the past, not anything particular, that this looks awesome. And all you see 2 years from now is this little red thing sticking out where the lock gets broken or not broken, depending on what, and
Okay.
nobody uses it. So if they pay to put it in and nobody uses it, there's no cost to the residents.
Okay,
But
you're moving
we'll
forward.
waive the,
Well, let's not
Yeah.
even move that far forward on it. Let's leave it at the motion that we go back and talk about a formal process of negotiating the
but if you
project
give them a heads
and the
up
cost.
right now, then.
That's the motion. Seconded by.
No,
No, we don't.
seconder, but.
No, we don't. Okay, further on that topic, all those in favor? Okay, that's the best we can do for a decision. All right. Area D, topics for discussion. I do want to add a couple quick things in here today. Thank you very much for that major appliance deal that they struck in terms of waiving the cost of bringing in major appliances. You all saw the ad in the paper, and so that's out there now. That was, no, it's a big breakthrough because those are the typical things that people throw in the ditch around here in the back roads. And so, you know, it's a no fee major appliance at the landfill.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a regional initiative, thank you very much. The one I want to talk about quickly is again, I was hoping we would be piggybacking on the Dan McMaster's presentation here, but I'll bring it up anyway, and it's controlling our watershed. We're moving ahead with some thinking on that.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see Dan McMaster's on the agenda or anything. Unless I missed it.
It was
The original.
registered petitions number A.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, anyway, the discussion on that is moving forward. We've had presentations at the Regional Economic Development Table, and so they're beginning to move toward getting some project cost and going ahead with a request for either or plus community forest or other forms of control over the watershed. What we're being asked to do is to keep on top of this in terms of the fact that when the Economic Development Commission was restruck this year, you know that we pared down the budget considerably and took a lot of things out of it. One of the things that we need to put back in here would be our share of moving forward with any forestry proposal. Range of $50,000 to $75,000 is not out of the question on it. So just keeping that in mind in terms of moving forward. With the work that the regional table is doing, they just want to make sure that we're not going to come along at the last minute and say, we're not part of the game.
So, if I may, is that $75,000 that you're quoting, is that the entire cost, or is that the city's share?
That would be the city's share, not the entire cost, absolutely not. No, and I'm saying that's the high end of it. The last time we did it, you remember about 8 years ago, it was way less than that. But again, we're using professionals and putting together a business plan to put in front of them, Councillor Crawford.
Okay, when I click on it on my thing, it just shows up with the name Dan McMaster and Community Forest. There doesn't appear to be, or mine doesn't open any detail. Years ago, the city of Grand Forks approached Greenwood, Midway, the area directors for a community forest. We were asking the province, we were gonna pay a bunch of stuff, and the other stakeholders said no. They didn't wanna do it, so we just went on our merry way. And then those same stakeholders got together and created a community forest.
Two of them did.
Yeah, so I'm like, we already have a community forest in our area, so I like, without the detail, I don't know what exactly.
We don't share the revenue from that. Greenwood and Midway get about $500,000 a year each out of their community forest. And have
Really?
now for a couple of years, yeah.
I didn't think they did, but could be.
Yeah. So,
That's-
you know, in the
that's
community
gas.
forest they offered us at the time, if I was around then, had a lot of problems. It was fragmented. It had a lot of root rot. There were some serious issues in terms of us accepting it. But I
Yeah.
agree, we were
It
not
was before
included in
that,
the
yeah.
initiatives that those
Yeah.
other.
It was
munis-
before that.
It's a dog-eat-dog world out there sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Moslin.
So are we, Mayor, I'm still looking, are we still under discussion?
We are under
Topics for
my
discussion in Area
discussion
D?
of the fact that if we're gonna work with Area D
Yeah,
in this new connection in terms of economic development, then we're gonna have to deal with forestry costs if it gets to that. which
okay,
it
well, the
really-
other one I want to kick on the table is transit.
Yes, yes,
Transportation.
yes.
Between, that really impacts the city and the regional district, if it's people who can get back and forth from one to the other, the donut gets into the hole and vice versa.
You know, at AKBLG, most of you that were there approached the transit lady and talked to her about our dilemma. So I expect that we're going to get some further talk on that from them.
Are we went from discussion back to the community forest thing, and we're kind of now.
No.
I'm sorry.
So are we like?
We're on the regional
swirling away?
district report.
Yes,
Yeah.
we started there, we referred back to the community forest, and now we're.
We did that
continuing on
just to
with
confuse you,
transit.
because,
I'm pretty sure that
Sorry,
we were successful.
okay, no, this was just a warning that I don't want you to
Yeah.
think that we're moving down this path, committing the city to money that we've not talked about.
Yeah, so we need the information.
And we're not close enough to it to put any dollars on
Yeah.
on the table yet.
Mr. Mayor, who is the regional district speaking with about the community forest?
Grace McGregor has led the discussions mostly in the past. Rolly Russell has also been involved. I think it's Dan McMaster that they are actually talking to.
Have they spoken to the local Willard Association about it?
We took membership out in the Community Forest Association, which presented at last week's meeting. And so we know that we have to be invited. So we're at a very early stage of creating our, basically our request to be invited, if you know the process.
May I suggest that more research is done, including talking to the local association to find out, because they have a different perspective on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make an educated decision based on all the facts, you should have all the facts, not just one side, to understand all the ramifications to it, because there's lots of pros and lots of cons to a community forest.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And we're not even sure what the shape of it would be at this point. So it's very low in the evolving process.
Like I said, I would suggest you talk to the local Woodlot Association, and I can provide you some contacts if need be.
I'd be surprised if we don't. I think that would be essential. Thank you. Further, I've got lots of other regional district stuff. I'll save a bit more for tonight, but we'll leave that one as it is. And moving down to monthly reports from department managers, a lot of content in it, and I would open it up for comments and discussion. Shows a lot of things getting done, and Councillor Moslin, you wanted to talk about the solar connection here at that point in the report. Councillor Zelinski had his hand up here.
Yeah, just a couple of questions on some of these things to different
Do you want to deal with it in order, Mayor?
Pardon?
Do you want to deal with the?
No, I want to cherry pick it, and it's a big report, so let's just get the things that people want to bring to the table here. Councillor Zelinski.
At the last committee of the whole, I alluded to the fact that ratepayer on Lansdowne Crescent was asking about their green space in the middle of their cul-de-sac there or whatever. Have you talked to the people at all to find out what the solution will be for them?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did reply to the email that was received, and so we haven't received a reply back from our reply.
One other question. It's been some discussion whether or not the boundary flood recovery was going to get a letter to our east side resident, our east side business owners. Has that happened?
Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to my knowledge in terms of a new letter since we previously touched on it. However, we would have to check in with the recovery manager to be absolutely sure, but not to my knowledge.
And you know that Councillor Zelinski will ask again, so that's probably a good idea to check. I know it's been a contentious letter and complex in terms of its impact and use. Further questions on monthly reports? Councillor Moslin.
Okay, Your Worship, yeah, I guess my concern was how the Solar Now project turned out on the city stage. And I guess a question about, the roof is on, it's up there. It's basically, there is what's called on the stage a proscenium arch. There's an arch that's holding the roof. But in the earlier drawings that council was presented with, the support for that arch was actually on one end of the roof. I wasn't too sure then how it was going to happen. But as it's turned out, the roof at the proscenium arch is now supported by a post right in the middle of the stage. And it makes using it as a stage a bit problematic. It limits the ability of the venue to have more elaborate productions. I have to admit, it was never a great stage to begin with. If the city is now going to abandon all hopes of ever it being a stage, then okay, let's just go on and put a lot more solar panels on it. Anyhow, what happened in the designs? We were presented in early December with one design, and then the project sort of morphed into another shape. So if I could, I guess my question is, what happened?
Any comment on that, Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did look at the option to have just a single span across, and it looked like that would bump the project budget by 20%. So to keep it on budget, we put in the center support there.
I guess I'm saddened, Mayor, a little bit. This is like, closing it. Again, I'm in the position of closing the barn door. I believe the city put in $67,000 and got a grant of $40,000. It was something like that.
100,000.
So, and the vision was to build. The stage does need a cover. But it was nice to put solar panels on it. But I think what we did in order to create the solar panel project is we sacrificed the stage.
Can I ask, is it possible to put that additional supports in future to take that post out if we so desired in terms of cost and efficiency?
I swear that would require redoing the structure. So it wouldn't be a retrofit, it would be a
rebuild.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
And I should also mention that the solar panels themselves are fairly light, so it wasn't so much there being solar panels on there that required the center post, is just the length of the span in terms of looking at how much load the beams could take.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moslin, I don't know whether we've got a fix for this. I understand I've spent a bit of stage time myself and run into things on stage.
And Councillor Studley has.
Yeah.
There was people on council who were able to give advice, including yourself.
Okay, I see us as identifying an issue. We'll see if it gets worse or better, but there would be cost involved in dealing with it in future. Can we agree on that? All right, further on the reports.
I can just make a comment on this. When, I would like to suggest that when there is an identified overage, to do the project so that it would not impede, perhaps that could come back to council before the project is started.
Well, and I think in retrospect, that's the kind of thing
I'd like to see that
we're
in the
looking at,
future.
but I don't know the circumstances of it going forward, and I'm not going to get into that detail
No.
today. Counselor?
Just because my memory is different than what I'm hearing here is, original budget $65,000. Staff came back for an additional $10,000, and the grant was worth $25,000 on the project. Pretty close.
Okay, what were the numbers?
Okay.
Your
Kevin,
memory's
can you give us some
different.
numbers here? It looks like they don't want to let this bone lie.
But I just want to clarify.
Yeah, so we did come back for a budget increase. We did also get an increase to the grant that corresponded with it. So when we came back for the budget increase, it was for the project budget to increase by $6,000. Of that $6,000 increase, $5,000 was a grant increase. Because of the way our budgets are set up, it is $6,000 on paper, although it's that $5,000 is offset by increased grant revenue. So we did come back with just for that extra $1,000 of our cost.
Okay, and I still say that if it's that important to us in future, we'll look at the cost of removing that and putting a stronger structure in place. Agreed? Nod. Okay. Yes.
Amber Sovloff, DBA. I'd like to thank Public Works for ordering the bike rack that will go on Market Avenue. Kevin did some extra work and put extra thought into it, and he's ordered a rack that won't damage the tires of bicycles that have thicker rims, so thank you very much.
Well done, well done. Let's give kudos to that. Councillor Moffat.
Just one quick question for staff. Just wondering when we're going to start a strategic planning process when that is on the books.
As soon as we get out of crisis, we're going to move into strategic planning.
Oh, I don't think we're in a crisis. Come on.
No, I'm joking. Okay, that's on the books for us, and I think you're asking myself and Diane to sit down and put some time frames on that. Is that appropriate?
That would be appreciated.
Okay, and I would agree to do that. And further comment on that issue? No, you want to do something different?
I do.
Okay.
I just want to thank the emergency planning, the public works, Mr. Reed and his team for the armory and the process involved in doing that every single day. I did read a report about that, and it was huge. So congratulations and thanks so very much for all the hard work that went into that project. Thank you.
Here.
What is that? Councilor Molson?
This is a report that Councilor Zelinski handed me at the beginning of the meeting. And it's the engineering report, the environmental management plan for the South Rockwell Armoring project. So
Was that not presented to council? That
it would be
discussion?
lovely to have it distributed to council. If, I could do that. You want me to do that? I'll go home and scan it and put it in the council mailbox.
I'll read it and memorize it. I wouldn't.
But I think the, memory serves me correctly, did we not have a presentation from Urban Systems on that? No?
Kevin again.
I think, Mr. Mayor, Urban Systems did not present that to council. It was part of the project requirements for getting some of the permitting. So I don't recall them presenting that to council, although it was something that was just part of, like I said, the
Technical
permitting
documents.
process.
Well, we've had several presentations.
Yeah.
Right. Anything further on the management reports? Councillor
Just
Moslin?
a couple questions. Got Councilor Operations Manager David here. Bottom of page, our page 19, 6 sanitary sewer issues resolved. Now, is that like 6 in one place, or just okay?
Yeah, over the month, we get calls for emergency kind of response from our crew.
Okay.
So they're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they'll go out to inspection chambers, and they'll check to make sure that the problem is either on our side or is the homeowner's responsibility, and then we take care of those issues. So there's many different reasons, but yeah, there was 6 this last month that the crew had to go in and work on.
Okay, so it wasn't out of the ordinary.
The volume might have been a little bit out of
That's
the
what I was
ordinary.
gonna get to,
Yeah.
was the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further, Councillor Moslin, did you have another question?
You know what, I can't wait to see, you know, in general, they talk about the assembly of the 19th Street project. Are you guys all watching that? I mean, I'm watching that.
Yeah, it's very
Wow.
interesting.
Somebody let me know when the train comes to town,
Yeah.
right? I want to watch that. It looks like a whole brand new way to build
Yeah,
something.
there's been a lot of curiosity on what those things are,
Yeah,
whether they're
white things.
Hi, the cranes are scheduled to start on May 14th.
May 14th for.
May 14th?
For 4 days.
okay. Let's get some good pictures.
Oh my God.
All right, can I have a motion to accept the manager's report? Councillor Thompson, no seconder required. All those in favor? Okay, I'm trying to leave some time here so we know we're going to have a discussion a lot about the vape, smoke and vape-free places. Temporary use application for Cannafest. This is, the way I understand it, instead of putting trailers there, you want to park? Is that basically it?
No. Do you want me to speak to it?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Annette MacArthur, and I hang around at Cannafest headquarters trying to get stuff done throughout my day. The application that is in front of you is for a secondary space in addition to our existing RV park, which is currently home to those modular units you were just speaking of. And this is in an effort to keep all of the parking for visitors that are coming to the festival on a per day basis, to have somewhere to park, so they're not distributed all over the community and city and blocking people's driveways. So we have we have a good amount of space to convert into a day use parking area, so there wouldn't be any overnight parking there.
Basically on the same property, just living it
It's
out.
adjacent to it. So it's the existing property is surrounded by chain link fence
Yeah.
already. That's the property at the 2420 68th Avenue. So it's the one property that's just east of that, that is the area for parking that's outlined there.
Does
It'll also be chain link.
does Cannafest own that,
Yes,
the whole thing?
correct.
Okay.
They own that, but the red one?
Yes.
No, 2, yes.
And one next to it.
And the one that is just to the west of it is the one that is currently covered in chain link fence.
Yeah.
The irrigation system is there. That's been our RV parking area.
Okay.
And so that parking that is outlined is just for cars and trucks that are coming just to attend the, so there's no overnight parking that will be allowed there.
Yeah. Councillors, Thompson.
I understand that Chuck's going to have a bus or something to transport people from the parking lot. That's his intention, I understand, from the parking lot, if that's approved, to the James Dolphin Park.
That's correct. There's two options that people have. They either walk over to the festival grounds, which isn't very far. In fact, it's a little bit closer from that parking lot than it is from the far end of the RV park. So most people will walk, but those that have mobility challenges especially, we will have a shiny new shuttle that's going to be going back and forth to the main gate from the parking area, and it'll leave as frequently as needed. Again, most people will be walking through, but having that, we've found over the years that it's very necessary for people, especially for people that have wheelchairs. It's very difficult for them to navigate some of that area, so they end up taking a long way around. So the new shuttle is arriving at the end of this week, I believe.
Councillor Krog and then Councillor Zelinski.
Yeah, hi. Is there any provision if that's gonna be used as a parking lot for dust control?
It will be.
So the price place doesn't get,
Absolutely, it will be, because the irrigation system that's in the other side keeps that, and the RV park keeps that under control. We can only water up to so long, because then the ground, we can't risk that it gets too soft when all of those heavy RVs start coming in. But yeah, that's definitely something that we want to keep on top of, just to be nice, if no other reason. Nobody wants to walk through a dust bowl to be able to get to the ground. So the irrigation is typically shut off a couple of days before the RVs start arriving, just to give the ground a chance to toughen up, just as it is at James Donaldson, the same.
okay.
Councillor Zelinski?
Thank you. So I believe I know what Cannafest is trying to do, and I support what you're doing. My question is more along the 3-year permit, whether it's a blanket permit, whether it's through 2-3 week period that the Cannafest is operating, or for instance, does Cannafest have okay to have that campground full May long weekend, Easter long weekend? Can they run the campground anytime? Just like just
The details of the permit, temporary use permit?
It is, from my understanding, it is a temporary use permit that is in operation during, like you say, the week or two approaching the festival. We have a lot of setup crew that come, and a lot of them will bring their RV into that area. As far as the parking area, it's not Cannafest's intention to turn it into a parking lot that we can just use whenever we feel like it. This application is very specific to, I would say, the 3, possibly 4 days of the festival.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand your use. I'm just wondering whether the permit specifies a certain section, or whether or not we can have a campground pop up long weekend in September and nobody knows what.
Planning.
Are we talking about the parcel for the parking right now? Or
Well, I think they're tied together myself.
Well, because
we still have to do the temporary use permit for this one, and if that's what council would like, is for it to be specific to just Cannafest and just for a certain time frame, then we can craft that into the temporary use permit. And we would be bringing that temporary use permit back to council for review.
that would satisfy your concerns.
Well, also my understanding is the temporary campground permit that's already been issued, they can have a campground anytime during the year. That's my understanding.
No, the temporary use permit on the adjacent property is available for special events, but it would still have to come back to council for approval. So if, say, the GFI approached Cannafest and said, we'd like to use it as a campground, they would still have to come back to council and ask for that permission to allow it for other events.
Nice to use that resource if we can.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moslin?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Thank you for presentation. First off, what's it gonna cost to park my vehicle there for a day?
Well, I know someone, so. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but we're likely going to charge $10 per day, somewhere around that number, because there is quite a cost involved with being able to secure and have professional parking attendants that are maintaining that space. So, we have to be able to cover those costs.
How many cars do you anticipate?
Territory of interest here, so in terms of details of what they're charging.
Oh, yeah. So you do anticipate 100 cars in a day? That'd be a fair guesstimate?
It would be a fair guesstimate, maybe a few more, but again, it depends on how the land is plotted out, and not all cars are created equal either. So, we have to look at what those spaces, what the existing space will accommodate, and I know that those drawings are being worked on now.
Okay, and I guess what remains to be seen is where do the overnighters, well, the overnighters are going to the tent area. We're gonna end up with late at night with a bunch of cars looking for a place to park.
I don't gather that. I think what they're doing is trying to preempt that search for a parking spot by having this available.
But not overnight.
I can address that quite easily, because it hasn't happened yet. Most people that are using that are people that are driving home. And they're sleeping in their own bed. They're not sleeping in a tent or in the RV area. So again, that parking lot will be empty, and people will not be allowed to stay over. Maybe, there may be some instances where maybe somebody has thought they weren't going to drink or something before they left, so, you know, we'll have to address that as far as what our security advises. But it's not intended to be and will not be an overnight use space.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Crop?
Just on the actual report that, or the request for decision, I see it's worded, and this is picky, but vacant site adjacent to Bryson Place, brackets parcel Z or parcel Z. That's not parcel Z. Parcel Z's across the road.
Actually, yeah, it is another parcel, Z.
Z and the Z.
It is actually another Z, which is kind of odd, but.
So we have two.
We do.
Why?
But this is privately owned.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That's weird. Okay, anyways.
So council, what we're being asked to do here is to implement the process in terms of a temporary use permit and to move it forward to this evening's meeting.
So moved.
So moved, Councilor Thompson. Oh no, we only second. Okay, Councilor Crowder makes the motion. And speaking last to it, Mr. James.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nigel James. As I live right by the proposed parking lot, I have great interest in it. It's a temporary permit. For how many years is it planned to come back to council?
3 years they're asking. Planning?
3 years, thank you. I mean, a lot of the answers have been provided. And no doubt there will be a fair amount of preparation work for planning to get road access and that sort of thing. And is the access going to be off 68th or 70th or both? Perhaps one in, perhaps one out. I wonder what the concept is of controlling the vehicles.
Okay, and so question of access, thank you again.
Temporary use permits in general, they're 3 years, and then with a potential for a 3-year renewal, which would have to come back to council for approval. And as far as access goes, I haven't seen, maybe Annette can answer the question on access in there.
But it's not seen to be a problem in terms of this temporary use.
I don't think
James?
so. We wouldn't want it to be.
No.
Indeed.
We have this on
It
the
all
floor.
depends on what Mr. Barakoff. What's that? I'm very pleased to hear there's going to be no overnight sleeping there. But presumably there is going to be overnight security as well.
Full security, both in the parking area and the car parking area, day use, and in the RV area.
I'm not interested in the RV area myself at all, just in the car parking. The other thing is that field, admittedly, if you're going to be doing construction on it, not construction, but leveling it out, that will take a lot of the grass away. That field becomes, at that time of the year, a wonderful pale yellow hayfield, ideal to set alight. And there's going to be suitable fire precautions and fire points put around as well.
Absolutely.
I expect that, and what I've heard already is that they're going to tend the field in terms of it not being a nuisance to anybody in the area, which to me would include fire protection and dust.
And of course the music goes on until what time is it due to finish?
This year, it is 12 midnight, so no 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, because we're all getting a little too old.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah, a
so-
little bit earlier this year.
All right, so
All right.
there will
So we're
be.
verging into the Cannafest itself, and we have a motion on the floor at this point.
All right. The only other one is, I've no doubt there will be, well, I forget what the terminology is, the trunk party. Tailgate party, yes. What, is there going to be any, not that I'm concerned duly about it, but others will be. What about alcohol and so on in the area?
I think there are strict rules that they'll follow in terms of alcohol, which includes limiting it to people's personal abode. So there are strict restrictions in walking around with open alcohol.
Okay, thank you.
You'll have
Thank you.
security there.
Yeah, it might help clarify that we will have open and close hours. So it's not just leave whenever you feel like it. There will be a time that you can drive in and then the time you must leave by. So that'll be well controlled by the security that'll be there.
And I'm hoping still that at the main event at Cannafest that you won't be forced to pour. Are you still in a position where
I think
you
we're
can
close to a decision, so
Yeah.
you'll be the first
really
to know.
encourage that? That's like 3,000 pounds of plastic for nothing.
We're really hoping that we don't have to
Yeah.
do
Okay,
that.
we have a motion on the floor to move this forward for tonight's meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Annette. Okay, the next, we're moving down into bylaws for discussion. The elections amendment, I mean, in my reading it, what I'm picking up is mostly that we're only gonna have one pre-election. Oh, Kevin's gonna present it, great, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so some of this came up in discussion following the election last fall. And two things really kind of came out of it. One of them was we spent a fair bit of effort maintaining a local poll book. And it's not the easiest thing to do because we've probably got names in the poll book that should have been removed years and years ago, either having moved away, passed away, and so on. But without actually getting, recommendations from anybody to strike names, there's no way of following up on that. So the province allows us to use the provincial voters list, which is more actively maintained, among other things, when people register in a new city. Their information is automatically updated and would therefore be struck off of the Grand Forks report. And so that's the one thing that we would like to do with this amendment is switch to using the provincial list rather than the local list. The other is we did run 2 advance polls. Caused a bit of confusion because the regional district and the school district voting was only done on one of the 2 days. And we had plenty of people showing up and looking to vote, and we were told that no, they couldn't. The other thing was that just from a cost perspective, you've got a minimum of 15 election staff filling positions for a relatively small number of voters. The reason we went to 2, we're actually only, as a municipality of under 5,000 people, we're only required by the Act to hold 1 advance poll. And the reason it was pushed to 2 was when the elections were held later into November, there were more snowbirds away, so an earlier advance poll gave more people an opportunity to vote before leaving. Now that the election's been moved forward and they're held in October, that particular reason for having another poll so much earlier is less significant.
Is that it?
Yeah.
That's it, 2 small changes.
Councillor Croghan and Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the one as well as the provincial poll, because when I looked at the voters list, I see dead people, like a lot of dead people on there. So people say, oh, we have this many registered voters. I'm like, yeah, but actually you don't, right? So I think if we can have a system that updates and we don't have to do the work, sweet.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
My only question, Kevin, is with the adoption of the bylaw, would it include resident registrations of the advance poll on election day?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, not at all. What does happen, there is a different form, but it's essentially the same information. The one requirement is that after we collect information on voting day, we are required then to submit that back to Elections BC so that it becomes a part of their registry.
So no one's disenfranchised?
No one will be disenfranchised by this.
Councillor Moslin?
Okay, Your Worship, I don't mind going to the updated voters list, that really makes sense. So getting the dead people off the voters list is probably, anyhow, I am a little apprehensive though about dropping a polling opportunity. In the last election, 3,000 people voted.
Yeah, that's about right.
Oh, right, so 10% of them showed up on that day. Who pays the election staff?
We do.
The city?
That's the city budget, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, that does make a little bit of a dent in my argument. I was gonna, somebody else was paying the election staff, I certainly wasn't gonna worry about it. We have a total, I'm sure that we had less than 40% turnout. Last time, it was maybe scratching closer to 30%. I don't have the numbers on my fingertips, but the challenge for the city is to get more people to vote.
Right. Les and then Daniel.
Les Johnson, GFTV. Looking through the old newspapers from a century ago, I do remember seeing lists posted by the city of all the voters asking people if they had any issues with this, if they knew somebody who was dead or had moved on or whatever, please let us know. That would probably be expensive now, but that's what they used to do.
Daniel?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, a lot of other municipalities have changed that are under 5,000 have gone back to the one vote to line it up, especially with school districts or regional district voting in the area. So everything is concise and controlled to what's a must do,
right,
versus it's nice to have, right?
Yeah, that confusion between the other voting bodies. Councillor Thompson?
I'm going to suggest, and I truly believe that with going to the provincial registry, you're going to have more accurate reflection of the percentage of people who voted. Because if you're looking at a voters list with any number of dead people on there, and there are several, the percentages are skewed and are meaningless anyway.
Worse than Facebook.
Dead people don't need to.
Okay, we're verging on.
Okay, one more quick thing. I think we can look at the loss of that one election or that one advanced election poll by adding a little bit more into a communications piece to simply push that message. Right. There will be one advanced and one election versus trying to spread that out.
Yeah. Kevin?
Sorry, sir, just one last thing to add there. We are required under the Act to hold the first advance poll 10 days prior. So what would actually be eliminated is the one in the middle, which is only held 2 or 3 days, or 3 days before the actual voting day. So the actual impact is somewhat reduced there. We're not looking at taking the early opportunity when we are required to hold that one still.
Okay, so we need the motion that would move this forward to the May 21st as presented. Councillor Thompson. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Kevin. All right. Does anyone want to present on this bylaw? Smoke and vape free, Kevin?
Sir, I would challenge the word want. This is my, I think this is the third or fourth attempt to present a variation of this since last September, but this is the latest revision of the proposed smoke and vape-free places bylaw. It is based on similar bylaws from around the province, and in September there was probably about 8 other bylaws that were similar. Today there's well over 20, and we've kind of had a look at a significant number of those. A lot of the intent of this bylaw is to localize the existing provincial restrictions on where smoking is permitted or not permitted. We've added a few things including the park space. That's not, park space is not covered by the provincial legislation, but that's sort of the one major addition.
Right, I recognize that. Councillor Crog.
I like it. There's just one thing that I think could be tightened up, and that's in section 4, which is this bylaw does not apply to. And we have 4.2 and 4.3. And it looks like it's supposed to be one sentence, but it says Aboriginal cultural activity, comma, then 4.3, carrying of lighted incense or other smoke, like, smudging, blah, 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 ceremonial or religious purposes. So my concern, I guess, that they're split, and it looks like they should have been together, would be that an Aboriginal cultural activity. So I could hold one in a park, and it makes it sound like everybody can smoke and vape all they want without the bottom part attached to it. Does that make sense? So I would think it should be written as Aboriginal or other cultural activities with carrying of lighted incense, other smoking equipment. So adding Aboriginal or other cultural activities, because there is more societies or, more groups that, rather than just the Aboriginal, that actually do a form of smudging and incense and stuff like that. So,
You've heard of the Church of the Universe, cannabis smoking is part of their cultural heritage.
yeah, that's not real. Just saying, it's not real.
Well, I think you open that door if you change that from the recognition.
No, because it says right there, 4.3, carrying of lighted, anything, anybody can do it,
Okay,
right?
I see.
So
Okay.
I'm just saying Aboriginal or other, so other groups, and it has to be cultural, and it's limited to that, so no culture vapes. Does that make sense?
Okay, Les, and then back to Kevin.
Yeah.
Just a minor comment on that, it's not real. That you're putting yourself in a position as an elected official of judging one religion over another religion. Sorry,
Yeah.
but you can't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, I can. Just kidding. Sorry. Not real.
Back to Kevin, then.
Just like Bitcoin.
Rod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just with regards to that, 4.2 and 4.3 were intended to be separate sentences, with the idea that if some form of smoking is a part of an Aboriginal cultural activity, that is permitted, but not being a spectator and smoking in the crowd while observing. And 4.3 is separate again because there are other ceremonial or religious purposes where there may be lighted incense or other that would be a part of it. So
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to put them together, plus the commas there already. So all you do is move those numbers, and you got a 4.2 sentence complete.
Take it under consideration.
I would prefer to see it separate, because I think that is, if we combine it into something that could be abused in a manner that we don't want to see it abused.
Well, right now, all of that other stuff is covered under 4.3. The other groups and everything, right? So the Church of the Narwhal or whatever. But right now, it just says Aboriginal cultural activity. So if Bannock hosts a fry bread in the park or something, I'm reading that as, oh yeah, I can smoke in the park, I can vape in the park while this cultural activity is taking place.
I don't read it that way, Councillor, and I wonder if
I did smoking to put that.
staff could check that with Aboriginal representatives to clarify the intent.
And smudging, I think, is what they're.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, that's right here. Sorry, it's right there. But it defines it rather than saying, hey, you can do whatever you want.
I see your argument, but I don't see a lot of people agreeing with you, so I think that we'll leave this one up to Kevin in consultation on that matter with Aboriginals.
Okay, I'm showing up to be.
Les Johns at GFTV.
Sorry.
I'm just looking at this and under 3.4, public sidewalks. I said this the first time this came before council, and I'll repeat it. That means that you can't walk home from downtown on a public sidewalk having a smoke. You have to walk in the street.
That's it, good point.
Like,
Okay.
I mean, am I wrong?
Well, Councillor Zelinski's been patient here, and then we'll go back to that question. Councillor?
Same sort of comment on some understanding. So 3.6, when I see inside a public building or space in which the city owns poles of interest.
Does that mean sidewalks?
Well, I guess what I'm more concerned about is the guys down at Public Works. Like, they're inside a facility that's owned by the city. Do they have to walk outside the fence now for a smoke?
Unless we have
No, it says smoking area.
designated smoking areas, and I think we need to face that throughout the community.
Well, I don't know if that sentence says that. That's what my concern is.
Well, and it would
that's-
say it if they've designated a smoking area there.
Yeah.
I think that we've got to have some compassion for people who have a cigarette addiction and realize that they're going to smoke and it'll be impossible for bylaw enforcement to enforce it if we don't be reasonable with offering alternative places to smoke. So I'm certainly throwing that out there. We're being fairly draconian with the rules, but it's going to backfire if we think we can avoid people wanting and needing to smoke. And we're going to go 3 for 3. Moslin, Thompson, Krog.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. I guess that I want to point out there is now an increased demand for smoking areas. Not smoke-free areas. Yeah, well, that's what we're doing, is we're creating demand for smoking areas. I do worry about, as Les Johnson just pointed out, by making all these places, defining all these places where you can't smoke a cigarette, you actually have created places where you can smoke, which as far as I can figure out is private homes as well as the middle of the road. Other than that, does anything else come to mind? I mean, so there is going to be a commercial impetus then to create smoking areas that we're going to have to deal with.
Well,
Councillor Thompson.
you know, I mean, I was a very, very dedicated smoker for many years. And I would say I'm now off 26 years. But the thing is that people do smoke. And I think designated areas is showing some sympathy for those who have that addiction, which it is. And to say, well, you can't smoke anywhere, you have to walk in the middle of the highway, have a cigarette on your way home. It's just, there has to be some compromise, I think, on that.
I've got a few lined up here, but are you interested in the business perspective on this at this point?
Thank you. Amber Sovoloff, Work and Play Clothing. So I can see both sides. I've had family members and friends that are chronic smokers, and I understand the addiction part and the need that they have to satisfy that addiction. But from a business perspective, in where we're located downtown, we have the challenge that our ventilation system, whenever someone smokes in any of the sidewalks surrounding our business, that includes down the side by the Wooden Spoon, for whatever reason, our ventilation system sucks that smoke up and pours it in my building. So we can't get away from that smoker that's smoking not only 6 meters away from my doorway, but anywhere on the sidewalk surrounding my building. It would be a benefit for us if there was a smoking area that took into consideration buildings' ventilation systems and locate that somewhere that it doesn't have that impact on business. Because there are lots of kids and lots of adults who have breathing disorders, my daughter being one of them. And when she is near someone smoking, she has to have an inhaler and steroids. So I understand the compassion for the smoker, but there also needs to be the compassion for the person who struggles with a breathing disorder. And we don't need to have that person have to not go into a store, right, if someone's ventilation system is sucking that smoke up into there.
All right, and can I go back to Kevin for a second here, folks?
Sorry, just to comment there, the provincial legislation upon which this is based does put that 6-meter restriction not only on doorways, windows that are able to be opened, but also ventilation intake. So that actually is something that is covered. So if you were to strike the sidewalks portion, that would still pretty much prevent anything within the downtown core, because I don't know that you could go more than 6 meters other than perhaps standing on the yellow line in the center of Market. I don't know that you could be more than 6 meters away from any potential of these entranceways.
Right, and I think that's what Amber's going to mirror here, is that 6 meters means nobody can smoke around your building at all.
Well, I don't think that people understand what 6 meters is. So
Okay.
there's the, no, I don't. I really, I
yeah.
don't believe that they understand. The patio area, or with the concrete benches outside of my business, people sit there and they smoke, and then they walk around, and all that smoke filters right inside my door. And we've asked them, could you please move? Right, your smoke is coming inside my store. They get very belligerent, and not only that, they take their cigarette butt when they're done and they flick it, and we clean that up on a weekly basis. And I should collect all the cigarette butts and bring them in here for you to see the amount of litter that's associated with that.
No, I totally agree with that. Les, we've been waiting, and then Nigel's been very patient with me.
Just to address that,
Oh, sorry.
I fully agree that that's really bad. And I've seen many hospitals where they have signs specifically so trucks won't idle their engines, delivery trucks, near a ventilation input, so that they won't be making everybody inside sick. The thing I wanted to say, to hammer away at what I was talking about, is if you create a law that you know you cannot enforce, and that people, especially kids coming up, will see that people just disobey that law, you're creating essentially an atmosphere, a mental atmosphere for scofflaws, right? If they don't have to obey this law, why should they obey that other law?
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's just realism. And one of the things I think I heard said here was that you were using a bunch of other cities as examples, and a whole bunch more had jumped on, and I suspect that a lot of this has to do with the legalization of pot last fall. Now all of a sudden everybody has to upgrade their smoke and vape bylaws, or create bylaws for vaping. Like, what do they say? Laws made in haste make waste? I mean, really, if somebody has a good idea, whether it's draconian or not, and everybody else jumps on that same bandwagon using essentially that idea as a template, you end up with a whole bunch of communities that have laws which, by and large, will be ignored, pretty much, until somebody gets fined. That's it.
Okay, and I can see Kevin's dilemma here. He doesn't want this sent back without some kind of rule being set here. Can we go to Councillor Krog and then Mr. James?
Okay, going back to the example of the city works yard, because it said can't smoke in city vehicles. And then we talked about a designated smoking area, but number 4 again, the one that I don't like, 4.1 says a designated smoking area established for the purpose, and then it goes on to say an outdoor public event. So there's no allowance for putting designated smoking areas at City Works or at the end of Lois Hagen, or basically.
Yes, and I agree. I think that could be modified to a designated smoking area. which would have to meet ventilation requirements, but could be
And
extended
distance.
to an indoor cabin.
And ashtrays
Right.
in those smoking areas.
Okay, Nigel's been really good, but let's hear
Yeah,
Nigel first then. Mr. James.
In fact, Les has already, also Mr. Johnson has already covered the thing. In fact, the thing I learned is, from my experiences, you never give an order that you cannot enforce, because it means that nothing then will be enforced. A cynical thing is that, yes, allow people to smoke, but ask them to eat the chips when they're finished.
Okay, make your point. Thank you. And back to Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, further to Councillor Crog's comment about Section 4, when Councillor Zelinski did mention Public Works, I glanced down at 4.1 and noted that there is no specific exemption there. We can certainly add that in and actually have that ready. I can have that ready to come back this evening with the minor change.
I think that goes along with, recognizing that we've got to decide where these smoking areas are going to be. That's going to take the pressure off of us trying to enforce an unenforceable rule with people who are addicted. And I see this mostly applying to cigarettes. Cannabis users are way easier to manipulate than the cigarette smokers. Councillor Moslin.
Yeah, I think I heard that, just to summarize, Mayor, we're asking Mr. McKinnon to go back and work on 4.1. That is
clarify designated smoking areas.
What you want to clear out of there is the outdoor pub, the reference to an event. Don't get rid of this specific event. We're going to work on the place.
Right.
And the other thing, I do kind of endorse Councillor Crog's suggestion about 4.2, that perhaps, I'm a little apprehensive about, isolating the Aboriginal cultural activity from all other cultural activities. His suggestion to put the two clauses together, 4.3, I think is a good one.
Okay, and we'll get a chance to vote on that when those amendments are made, Kevin.
Yeah, indeed. So just further to why it had outdoor public event, the rationale behind that was these events are something that typically comes back to council or to staff for review. So it's not just, I'm having an event and there's my smoking area. So I guess my question sort of towards the changes that came up as a result of Councilors Crog and Zelinski with things like Public Works. How does council, or how would council like to determine where the approved smoking areas are going to be? Is that something that should be brought back to council? Is that something you want to delegate to staff?
could be
You want
left
some
operational.
criteria, but then do we need to define some criteria as to what's acceptable?
Well, let's leave that as a question that we ask, because there's a lot of private businesses that may want to define a space. So, and at this point, what your changes would do is it wouldn't preclude the outdoor events. It would just include the fact that this might not be just outdoor. Councillor Crog.
Yeah, that would be simple to fix in 4.1. Bylaw does not apply to city designated smoking areas or established for the purpose of outdoor public events. So that basically says that in the future, if we want a part of City Park to be a smoking area, then that's a city designated one. If we have one at the fire hall, it's amazing how many firefighters smoke, just saying. Then we designated it. So a city designated smoking area and or an area established for the purpose of blah, blah, blah.
Let's leave that wording choice to Kevin. You know the intent here that you're hearing, and I agree with Councillor Crog. I think we need to open that up. Okay, further on this. So we took a big chunk of it at this point. I don't think we've identified all of the issues. I think the one that I hear here is that businesses may have arrangements they'd like to make. I'd like to see us keep tabs on that at a city level with this bylaw, but I think we need to give businesses an opportunity to adapt to the fact that we're trying to put the smoking thing under control. Okay, so the recommendation at this point on this matter. Let me go back here. So that we're moving this to give it first 3 readings at the 21st of May meeting. That's what the motion is I'm looking for. And Councillor Moslin makes the motion and then speaks to one last thing he wants to bring up.
I know, I just want to say instead of first 3, can we go first 2?
Why would you ask that?
Because I don't want to tie everything up in a neat bow in one meeting.
Because you can't adjust the 3, if you go to 3, you can't make those
Well, that's what we were
changes.
told last time, that after the 3rd reading, that's it, right? No more amendments, thanks.
Can I ask?
First and
So
second.
if, once this comes up for first 3 readings, and if council has an issue with something on there and they require some changes, like if there's some changes that extra than what Mr. McKinnon will have on there, then council can opt at that point to have 2 readings and then have the changes, or you can do the 3rd reading with the changes, and so then you've got a couple of options to do it that way.
Okay, and that decision would be made on the 21st?
On the 21st, yes.
Yeah, so that would be acceptable, Councillor Moslin.
Yes.
And you do make the motion at this point to move
Yes,
it forward?
thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Zelinski.
Just more clarity, just for something that I know. So Parks Access Bylaws been given 3rd reading. If we wanted to add Massey Park to the parks that are excluded, we would give it 4th reading and then amend it, or?
So I believe that one has already been given 3 readings.
Yeah.
So in order to modify anything within that parks bylaw, you'd have to rescind 3rd reading, put in a suggestion of the addition or whatever
Yes.
you wanted to do, and then we would have to take it back for 3rd reading.
Okay. All right, strangled by our own rules.
The Parks Access Bylaw, if I recall right, is already 4th reading. The parks were amended
Yeah.
at the 3rd reading level and were given then 4th reading.
We passed that.
That was
Yeah,
4th?
like I'm looking at our highlight
Yes.
reports. It's-
Okay, so on the 25th, we gave it 4th reading, not the 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean we can't amend it at this point, but we'd have to start the process all over again. Yes?
I was just wondering, because I do have a question regarding the readings. Because it was my understanding that the reason that they put 3 readings as being necessary before something is adopted, I thought was to allow public input and time and consideration in between those readings. And so, from what I'm thinking is that because things are sometimes a timely matter, you guys are allowed to do the readings consecutively within one meeting? Can someone just speak to, does that make any sense?
Yes? We could slow it down a bit, but
So I can brief to, regarding the introduction of a bylaw. So today would basically be the introduction of a bylaw.
Yeah.
In theory, we could have had this tonight and had first reading of that bylaw. That's kind of the introductory space. The charter allows us to, through a bylaw, which is our council procedure bylaw, to give up to 3 readings all at once if council deems that necessary. So it's up to council to say we only want to give 2 readings, but 3 will definitely speed up the process. And with having these introductions at a committee of the whole level, it provides public input on various levels along with council's input into the bylaw before it goes through these other stages.
rather than bring first reading to a regular meeting, so that joins the access here. Councillor, or not, Mr. James.
Badger James or Mr. James. The thing's just been said there by, get his name.
Drexler.
Mr. Daniel Drexler. It's a thing which really concerns me. About the only time that anybody can say what they wish to the council is by coming to you as a delegation. Because when you get onto regular meetings, it's got to be apparently according to the agenda, topics on the agenda. That is in the evening when people finish work or shift work or whatever. So they could come along, but they are limited to what you've been discussing. committee of the whole meetings, we can raise our comments, etc., whenever we wish within the time. But quite a lot of people can't do it because they have to take a day's leave.
Okay, and if I might interrupt, this is going on to a procedural issue, which is a very valid question at this point to ask ourselves, but in fact, the motion on the table at this point is the one that we need to vote on. But
perhaps I should raise it as a delegation another time.
I'll certainly, I think that we're cognizant of that at this point as to the fragility of our decision-making. And Lev?
Just some feedback from one of the viewers on Facebook here. Medicinal cannabis smokers are bound by these same rules. And the other one is, another question would be, since they have wine in an outdoor space event, will council be allowing events permits to events wanting to have people smoking cannabis?
Could you say that again?
Okay. I could answer it.
I'm sorry, I
To
missed the
be
question.
clear.
Well, you've been following it online?
Yes. Yes, I have, and I can't read all the
You should have asked a
comments,
question.
and it's pissing me off.
Shut him off.
But the other question would be, since they have wine in an outdoor event space, will council be allowing event permits to events wanting an area to smoke cannabis? If it's a designated smoking area, then I would assume it was cigarettes and cannabis,
Yeah, so we're putting it all together at this point, not differentiating and making harder rules for cannabis. As I said, they're the easy part of the job. It's getting people and their cigarette butts under control. Okay, we beat this up enough. Kevin's looking medium happy here. He's got some changes, but this has been a hard grind. This is the third time in front of council on this one. So I guess the leftover for me is to hear back from some of the businesses, how they're going to handle it within their own perimeters. And I think that'll be an interesting thing for us to condone, support, whatever, but I think there should be some right of the businesses.
Yeah, it did say market, or it did say the downtown business core.
Yeah.
The whole thing was.
Right, so we're banning it on the sidewalks at this point. That's correct?
Depending on which sidewalk, right, if you think about it.
Would council be willing to participate in a meeting with the business community to come up with best solutions for a smoking area?
That goes without saying. Let's see if we can do something in terms of how this affects businesses, because they have to live with it, and we don't want to be insulting people who think they can smoke on the street by accosting them. So let's see what we can do to make this work. But I think the general trend across the nation is to control cigarette smoking. Okay, and we're ready to vote on that motion that's on the table. This is to move it forward to the May 21st for first, second, or third reading, depending on how quickly we want to go. Councilor Crogg,
Last kick at it.
You're reading online?
No, basically when you're, most of our bylaws, that there was a comment about it's unenforceable, and if you think about it, if we have 10 parks and somebody's smoking over there and somebody, it's not gonna happen, but it is enforceable as similar to a lot of our other bylaws, which is by complaint, right? So example would be that downtown, that where the benches are, people are smoking, the store owner comes out, asks them to stop, they don't, then that should trigger the bylaw, not just somebody walking around and tackling smokers for no apparent reason.
Kevin, last word here.
Okay, thank you very much for hopefully the last word, but to Councillor Crogg's point, yeah, this would be obviously something that was complaint driven. It wouldn't be somebody deliberately going around looking to catch people. But one thing that was added in this revision of, thank you, yeah, Section 5, signage, which was not in the original version of this from September. This gives the ability to post a sign, and quite honestly, that gives then not only our own bylaw person an opportunity to point out, but it gives the general public an opportunity to say, hey, I'm not sure if you noticed, but
expectations, yeah.
And a little peer pressure sometimes goes a long way.
If it's necessary, Councillor Moslin.
And just a suggestion about the sign, put the bylaw number on it.
That's in there.
Section 5.3.
Okay, are we ready for the vote on this matter? So we're moving it forward to the 21st of May. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Council. We have no correspondence. We're down to a last item. Councillor Moslin, I think I mistook the meeting you were talking about. The May 2nd meeting?
The one on housing, did I not, have I got the date wrong? I was,
Was this the workshop that we had?
no, Mayor. I'm talking about the one that was so ably chaired by Mr. Strukoff.
Oh, that was the May 1st meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I was
Okay.
traveling, I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Angela's comments too were related a lot to.
Yeah, I know council was there. I would like to hear about what my impression were. It was a very well-run meeting. It was kept to focus. Everybody got a chance to speak. There are some very good speakers there. I wrote down all the questions and that sort of thing. I'd like to hear from my colleagues who were there what their impressions were and what they think we should do next, if anything.
Open up.
I thought it was a great meeting. I'd like to see all the people that were speaking and those that were invited that weren't able to attend. I'd like to see them even form their own group of some kind, just bare minimum those people meet together. That'd be a great help to all of them in the community too, and then on somewhat of a regular basis have one like we just had with the community involved as well.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent meeting, good input. Angela, what you are proposing, is there an opportunity for the two groups to work together? Your group and the Citizens for the Grand Forks?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that. I put it out there as a suggestion so that people could think about some of the different options and maybe generate different ideas. The meeting itself was more question and answer based to the panelists, and the second half was more about coming up with an answer to one individual question. So it wasn't put forward as something to be discussed at that time, but as far as I know, it is available to people to discuss and go from there.
The only disappointment I had in the meeting were the numbers that got up and left. That was very disappointing that people didn't come and listen to the entire workshop.
Having watched it on TV now, I didn't know that.
No.
It's about a third or more of the people left.
But I thought there were some very valid questions and answers, and certainly something that needs to continue.
Certainly well attended, and people have lots of concerns. But my concern with some things, there's still too many groups. It needs to be kind of put together as a committee or something, because it just seemed like, and then with your presentation this morning, you can think, well, this is another component where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, and all different tangents for the same thing. So, that would be my thoughts. It would be
One of the comments by Ann Howard and by Boundary Family Services was the need for a stakeholder group to be established. And I think that might identify, the kind of concerns that would move us towards accountability of the local charity to run this. I heard them saying, we're not going to allow it to be run poorly. And part of making that happen would be that there would be a separate stakeholder group that Darren and Boundary Family Services would establish. Is that something you heard as well?
I don't think it developed much. Again, too many different things. And it's just, so I guess too many spokes of a wheel that needs a hub, and it needs to work together.
Sorry, if I may, if I remember correctly, it was suggested that there be different committees or something formed, but I don't think there was anything, or a committee as to under what umbrella. I don't think any of that was actually defined.
And I guess, Councillor Moslin, the big thing is who's we.
Yeah.
When you said, what should we do? We know that we being mayor and council did not take the lead role on this community meeting. So where our position is, or what spoke is ours, or whether we are the hub, you know, the mayor talked about facilitating at that meeting, which I think, you know, has happened. Hopefully the groups with concerns can come forward with suggestions on how this council, how this board can help facilitate those discussions, and then see what comes after. But I thought it was a good meeting.
Amber?
We did have discussions after the meeting about forming such a committee. And we had some discussion on who would be the appropriate non-biased chairperson. So if anyone has suggestions on who they feel would be fair for that position, I would definitely welcome that.
I just want to clarify something from the meeting. There is a committee that's set up right now, Darren had said, and the one component that's missing is from the community. So he's talking about asking the citizens to join up on that committee, so that's we all know, sorry, I just ran up the stairs. So we all know, and it's more transparent for everybody. So I think that was part of the question about the committee.
Darren has formed then, or is forming, the stakeholder committee, which would include a component of community representation.
It was my understanding that everybody that was at the table had a representative on that committee except for the community, the citizens. And he was talking about asking us to join in.
Makes sense rather than multiple committees at this point. Les?
Just for people who wanted to see Angela's, the actual full text of her presentation, yeah, it's in the agenda here. It's also in an April 16th post on GFTV. Just look for the post that says, "In this gloomy climate of negativity, a hopeful ray of positivity." So that's her thing.
Sorry. So, in answer to Amber's request for names being put forward, I was approached at the end of the meeting, and the name of Rolly Russell came up as maybe one unbiased. And also, we've spoken to Everett Baker, and he is more than willing to be the spokesperson for the committee as an unbiased. He would be great because he does speak for both sides. He knows the business part and the issues that are going to be happening with having the community kitchen here as well. He is the president of the food bank, so he is another person that, you know, he knows both sides. So, and if anybody, it is out on Facebook, but if anybody wants to contact the city or the citizens for Better Grand Forks, we have set up an email address. It is c4abgf@outlook.com. If it is a private person that's giving us the email, we will ask for their permission to make it public. If it is a public entity that is sending us the email, it will be made public, and we will be setting up a Facebook page so that people can start contacting us and giving us solutions and asking questions and things like that.
All right, thank you.
May I ask, is it C looking or C Charlie?
C Charlie, the number 4.
Okay, we've covered that late item, and I'll ask to conclude things, are there questions, further questions from the public?
I do. And this was resulting from the community meeting held May 1st. The question is directed to you, Mr. Mayor Taylor. Regarding the BCH project, at the community meeting, you stated that there will be public consultation and a vote regarding the land swap between the city and BCH. We have since learned that the only thing council is committed to getting public input on is the legislative requirement for zoning bylaw change. Our question is, are you trying to manipulate the situation to come to a public vote because it is well known you do not want this land swap, or are you deliberately misleading the public?
Okay. For clarification, council has for some time been involved in negotiations with BC Housing. So we are continuing with those discussions. When we have a document that we are comfortable with in terms of a letter of understanding, then we're going to move to a public process, which we're hoping we can, and council has agreed, I think, that we would combine the zoning question with a public hearing on this. So the zoning question is in fact the question of the deal. If we turn down the zoning, then the deal is off, right? So we're prepared to go to the public with the details as we can share them of the deal and discuss that in light of the zoning as well. So the zoning is the trigger. If council turns down the zoning, then the deal is gone. So what I wanted to make really clear is that we're going to the public with this switch, with this deal, before the final decision is made. That's got to be understood. What we're working out with BC Housing is something that we're comfortable in looking at. It's not a final deal. The final deal will be on that public hearing date. I don't know whether we can nail that down yet or not.
Your worship, staff is working on the timelines. They're going to be very tight ones, and so we have kind of a preliminary, and we're just kind of working out the details as to how that's going to work. Likely the plan would be is that the public hearing process would be more than an hour long, that we would likely have that on a separate day and time than you would have like a regular council meeting. Typically we do like 6 o'clock and then 7 o'clock we have regular. I think that this one here would be extended, and so we just don't know for sure what date that is. We have to make sure that we're fitting the timelines from the second reading. You have to have a public process so many days after that to fit into that. So that's what we're working on.
So, and again, we would go to the vote then after the public hearing a week after, or approximately a week after that public discussion. Councillor Zedlinski, we're going to have to move around. We've got a lot of hands here.
Yeah, just to clarify that this public hearing process, and maybe this is more of a question to staff, the public hearing process we figure is going to take longer than usual, so that it'll be actually a special meeting. It will not be in a regular committee of the whole or regular meeting. Is that correct?
So it is a public hearing,
Yep.
and so the objective of a public hearing is to ensure that all voices are heard. And so, you know, because this might be a sensitive nature topic, to process, we figured that the fair process is that you would have offer that more time so everybody has the opportunity to be heard. And so we don't have to have a public hearing on the same day as a regular meeting, but it is a public hearing as far as the legislative process.
Just for the public, don't look for it as a regular committee of the whole or a regular meeting. It will be a special
public
meeting.
Okay, I agree with that. And I'm going to have to move around in this direction. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this is all predicated on whether or not we reach an agreement with the letter of understanding. If that doesn't happen, if there is no letter of understanding, then there will be no bylaw to bring forward.
We wouldn't go through that process.
Yeah. So that's just, you know, I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
Mr. James, keeping it tight?
Indeed, Your Worship. Could you give a very brief explanation of the 3 projects that BC Housing are mixed up in now? And I named was the 2nd Street, 19th Avenue, 2nd Street, 19th Street, and 70th Avenue, the 4 lots on 70th Avenue, within the permission of in-camera meetings and that sort of thing, to give us a brief outline of what the hell's been happening.
Okay, and I think I just did that with the switch between 2nd Street and 19th Street. There's no more I need to add at this point to that.
The switch between 2nd and 70th.
Yeah, the second and
Right.
70.
But that's the first time I've heard it officially, that therefore Second Street is being axed and 70th Avenue is being considered. A month ago I said, if we want, and the important thing is trying to help these guys who are in desperation, if they go to the West End,
Okay.
there is
you're
no
drifting into
facility,
the
there are no
arguments-
facilities there.
You're drifting into the arguments that will come forward in a public meeting in
Okay.
terms of that particular move. And Les, and then back to Pamela.
Okay, just for purposes of clarification, I'm pretty sure that there are some people out there who believe that when you talk about a public consultation, some people think that's going to be some sort of referendum where they get to vote. You should make that clear to them that they're giving you input, but the voting is done by council, correct?
Yes, and please make that clear if you can, that we're not asking for a referendum on this. We're asking for input from the community.
For sure,
We
we're gonna
will
get
make-
input.
We will make the decision. Pamela?
Just to follow up with that one question, sorry guys, I do have another one to follow and hopefully we can answer this quickly. Members of the community, do want a yes or no answer. Are you in favor of the land swap with BC Housing? Mr. Taylor? Mayor
Okay,
Taylor, sorry.
see, that's what's being negotiated. So it's not up to me to give a yes or no on that. Council decided to make an offer to BC Housing of those 4 lots. So that's what's being worked out in detail in this letter of understanding.
Okay, I had to ask a question because it was asked for me to ask.
Okay.
Another one is, Mr. Mayor, it is obvious from the many instances, people who are supposed to be making the decisions for Whisper of Hope and for the Warming Center seek your approval before giving out information. And it is obvious that we are going to have a year-round Warming Center, as those visiting the current one will not be seeking living accommodations in what we still call the Second Street project. So we ask you, as the silent leader of Whisper Hope and the Warming Center, why do we need two establishments serving food for those in need, in the light that the fact the community kitchen has stated they will be preparing food off-site? It seems to us it's a bit of a waste of money that could be going to more constructive ways of assisting those people in need.
I have no way of answering that question. I think we'll take it under advisement that those are concerns that people have, but it's certainly not understanding the issue that we're facing here, so I can't say anything to that.
And I don't know whether or not the Whispers of Hope would be running the warming shelter year-round. I don't think that's been determined. My understanding is that it's operating until the end of June. And then and before that, they will likely come up with whether or not
Okay, I
they will
see
continue.
Les sneaking his hand up. I've got Councillor Krog waiting here. Comment.
So somebody posed this to me the other day, just for clarification. The warming center will be in operation while GFI is going. Is that correct?
It's operating till the end of June.
And the GFI is in the last week of June, so, okay?
Okay. And so, again, the extension of the warming center till June is contingent on the May 15th meeting of Whispers of Hope and the election of a board of directors that may or may not wish to continue with the program. That's what I understand. So, moving around here, Councillor Krog, no?
No, I
Councillor
answered.
Just in a quick aside to the 2 kitchens that are being, I spoke to Louise Heck about that just after the meeting, because my concern too. 2 kitchens, 2 fundings. So it was brought up that the warming center may be scaling back on their food serving. They don't have any answers right now, but yeah, they recognize that community has 2 kitchens.
May I add to that? So this is a little bit where I think we all need to have a group committee so we all are on the same page, because I can't see somebody waking up at the warming center and not being able to grab food. So they're gonna walk down to Whisper Hope for food. We really need to, and I hope the community can come together and build a committee, because there's a lot of questions, a lot of hidden answers out there. Things are being done without the community input, and this segregation between all of us it's needed to come to an end. So if there's some way that you guys can help us bring it together, because there is 2 council members that have sat on the board. I'm only reaching, I only get bits and pieces of information, and I have to go with what I get, because everything's hidden all the time. We really need to, and if the city could help us come together, that would be really great. And Mr. Taylor, sorry. I know this is something that you favor, is looking after the people in need, and I do see that need. But everything being hidden all the time, and us reaching for every bit of information, it's annoying, but it also keeps us in a state of fear. And we're also being frowned upon as haters, which we're not. There's a lot of frustrated souls out there. We just want that things done correctly. So if we can get that committee going, if we can reach out, if you guys can help us bring it together, great. I'm willing to go and get my Whisper Hope membership today in order to be able to do this. But something's got to come together. This is crazy. We've got too many different entities, too many different groups. We've got to bring it together. And we need you as a leader to bring it together, because it was something that you're very passionate about, sir.
And at this point in time, to focus and to keep information clear, the budget that's been extended for the warming center is the budget they've been working on. So there will be a food budget there. So you're not going to have people at this point in time waking up in the morning having to walk and find food. Okay, keeping things straight like that. The other thing is the committee that is being formally struck here is by Boundary Family Services. That committee will be stakeholders, and I understand from today's discussion, will also have a citizen component. So that to me seems like the kind of leadership that we need from Boundary Family Services, recognizing the divisiveness that there is in the community on this. So I'm optimistic that we're moving that direction, Pamela.
It would be very nice.
If I could maybe offer a little bit of clarification, if it helps, to Pamela, in regards to the 2 kitchens operating. The warming shelter, as far as I see it, is a place for those individuals that are going there to stay there. Then they would access the breakfast. The hunger issue is much more widespread than those individuals that go to the warming shelter. And so the soup kitchen itself would be able to provide the morning items, as well as the soup or lunch meal, to people that do not stay at the warming shelter, but are within our community.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this meeting to an end and would encourage you to continue with your discussion though after we adjourn the meeting, but we do have some paid staff here and we need to cut it short. But please do talk to each other. I think the more of that togetherness you can find, and if you find it in this council, great. Thank you very much, and can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Ford.